Ms. Nardos Bekele-Thomas, thank you so much for being with us on SABC News.
Thank you for having me, Sherwin.
What do you make of the current situation as it relates to gender-based violence in South Africa? And when I say gender-based violence, I specifically mean, in the main, violence of men against women that often results in the murder of those women. What's your observation being on the ground in South Africa?
Sherwin, I really think that this whole gender-based violence is really, about humanity. It's about dignity. It's about freedom from fear. It's about regaining and reclaiming, our moral authority as leaders, as institutions, like our churches, the police, the justice system, because women are losing faith and trust in these institutions. So we need to reclaim those institutions, and we need to reclaim, moral authority of our leaders at all levels. I'm not talking about government, but also, church leaders, chiefs, kings, all these moral authorities, we really need, to have them back. We have to reclaim.
I'm glad you talk about the criminal nature of it, right? I mean, if you look at some of the most recent cases, there's an element of depravity that we are dealing with, particularly Tshegofatso Pule, who was stabbed in the chest and then hung from a tree. We don't forget, for example, Uyanene Mretswana last year in Cape Town, bludgeoned to death in a post office. There's a depravity to this. What's your observation, given the nature of the violence that we are seeing against women in South Africa?
It's to me, to tell you the truth, when I came in 2018, I had so much hope in South Africa. I came here understanding the fact that there are strong institutions, knowing the fact that there are Tutuzela centers, which I used to take, as a model to other countries like in Kenya and in Benin and other countries where I was working. So I came here, I said, okay, fine. There are human rights institutions that are strong. There are civil society organizations that are strong. And, I never expected such a thing to happen. And, little did I know, and after, I came in 2018, and there was this whole movement of Me Too, and then the total shutdown, which led to the summit. And at the summit, when I saw the women, the victims, the survivors, recounting what they had to go through, I mean, almost everybody was crying, including the president. But, it was so clear to me that this thing is institutionalized and ingrained. It might be also a legacy from apartheid. It is really a legacy because I think also inequality, the whole level of poverty, the whole level of, being segregated and not being part of the whole economy and not having a stake at the economy, and all these adds up. It's not just what we call brutality that comes because because of the level of alcohol use or drugs or whatever, which is also a manifestation of the bigger things, So I think, in South Africa, we really need to look at in a holistic way.
Right. The minister, for example, earlier this week was talking, the minister responsible for women in South Africa was talking about the fact that South Africa is in a crisis and that swift action is required. Many would argue that South Africa has been in a crisis for, over a decade, for more than that, possibly, as it relates to the abuse of women and the empowerment of women. Does the language from our politicians need to change? It seems to be a repeat. Every time there's a big blow up of GBV in quick succession, you tend to hear the same kind of narrative from politicians. Is language important?
Well, language is important because, at least it shows that there is some kind of recognition, but action is so critical and very important. And we need to move into action. What I liked of the fact that, after the summit is that there was this whole national strategic plan that came out, but, it was an action oriented. And I liked the fact that the president, and I have to commend him for that, for taking it at his level. and saying that this is a crisis, it just requires an emergency. But the response should be in tandem with what we call emergency and crisis. A crisis response is not a response at a normal pace. There should be a quick response. We really need to be very active and very proactive and really stem out this scourge and this pandemic. Otherwise, the way we are treating COVID-19, the way, we treated like HIV/AIDS in the past, we need to really make sure that it is at all levels. And people, as citizens, should know that it is everybody's responsibility. It is everybody's responsibility and not only government. Because what happens in a family at home, a government would not know. If you don't report it, it just, becomes an intergenerational, pandemic.
Yeah,
because your children will take over. Yeah.
You often hear governments talk about their response to the COVID-19 pandemic as an all-of-government response. You need an all-of-government response to GBV as well. I certainly agree with that. President Ramaphosa announcing a 4-step plan to beef up the response, broadening access to justice, changing social norms, promoting accountability, and creating economic opportunities. Let's focus on that last one. How important is the economic empowerment of women in terms of eradicating gender-based violence?
I think, economic empowerment of women is really fighting patriarchy to start with, because that is the evil, patriarchy. It is really fighting against toxic masculinity. It's really making sure that women, are independent. My fear is that, for example, with this whole lockdown, women are in the informal sector, and they are the ones that lose most of the jobs. Their livelihoods are eroded. So, you are just disempowering them. They will not even have the courage to go out and report what's happened to them, because they don't have anything that would make them feel that they are independent, they're empowered, and they can fight this. So economic empowerment is core. And we have to look at it from all perspectives. It's a and also, one thing that I really say is that men should not be bystanders.
That was my next question. My next question was exactly that. There was a politician speaking on the news earlier this week, and he talked about the importance of women rallying together. Just as women rallied together to defeat apartheid, so too women must rally together to defeat GBV. And, my eyebrow raised above my spectacles, because it's not about women defeating the scourge of femicide. Surely that is the responsibility of men. Speak to that.
Yeah, I guess, that was the missing link. And we are now moving into that. The he for she is a great example, and it's doing so much. And, and I thank, our sister, our Edie, the director of UN Women, who's been really an advocate of this thing, and, a staunch believer in making sure that men are engaged in this. And men should be, a part of a solution, and we should embrace them. If there are men that have problems, for example, if they know that they are, ill-treating their wives, if they know that they are beating their wives, then they should seek some support. We should support them, because, it's not just, that they are criminals. Yes, they are criminals, but, we have to also make sure that we prevent them from being criminals. And therefore, we should help them to stop, be part of, the whole movement to stop and prevent the violence. We should support them to help and support the survivors. We should make sure that they engage, their communities. And we should make sure that there is a personal commitment. As a father, as a brother, as an uncle, they should be part of the solution, and they should say enough is enough.
There's a question.
There are sick people.
There's a question I've been asking my interviewees amidst the racism pandemic in the world, the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all suffering from. And this is the question: how do we ensure that tomorrow is better than today? Final word.
It is, I guess, we are moving. I mean, the whole thing is that we are now globally and nationally, we have now lowered our standards in terms of societal values. And these are the foundations. And, one thing that I keep on saying, and yesterday in one of the interviews, I told them, yes, we can try to do what we can in our countries, but, information is in the palms of our children. And what happens elsewhere in America and Western countries, which they see as the example of civilization, comes to their hands. And it's not only the good things that come to their hands, it's also the bad things. So, families have to redouble their efforts in educating their children, and communities should be engaged, churches should be engaged. It's a whole society movement towards these ills. Pandemic, yes, it's like we do with the COVID-19. I love the way the government has taken, the whole response to COVID-19. It's a whole society, whole government approach, everybody together. We are so proud of South Africa. And, this whole pandemic of GBV, gender-based violence, should be done that way.
Nardos Bekele-Thomas, thank you so much indeed.